Okay, and we're rolling. Today we have Brandon Steiner, founder of Steiner Sports, also the author of You Gotta Have Balls. I have to say, I absolutely love this book because you talk a little bit about the human element of entrepreneurship. What are some of the human elements of entrepreneurship?
Well, the human elements. Well, first, it's nice to see you, and nice to be on the conversation with you. I don't know, the human elements. A lot of people argue about whether you're born with this, whether you could develop this, but to me, entrepreneurship is simple. It's a mindset. So your ability to understand the circumstances and the industry and the market that you want to get involved in. Try to see where the white space is. Try to see really where the problems are. There's only one reason to be into entrepreneurship is to be a problem solver. And that's what people get confused. Like you're a problem solver. So it's very difficult because you're not jumping on a bandwagon where there's this glorious industry, you're jumping into it. And I'm not saying it's always glorious, but entrepreneurship is it's trying to find a problem and trying to come up with a really brilliant solution that no one else has thought of. And then there's the risk part of it because you could be wrong, or maybe people just don't believe you, which is very common. Or maybe the risk part of it is, big financial undertaking to kind of get your idea to go through. But it's difficult when you come up with an idea and everyone's going one way and you want to go another way. And I think the leadership skills, like, again, these could be taught, but, you have to be able to talk and be able to sell people into your idea when they believe in something else. And, faith is such an important part of entrepreneurship because, faith is something that you have to believe in that you can't see. So faith is a very important part of entrepreneurism. It's something that really brings all those three things together because you're believing in something that people can't see. You're trying to solve a problem that is for the betterment of that business, that industry, or for those people that you're dealing with. And you got to lead. And a lot of the leadership comes with your ability to have a strong faith and be able to sell in a strong faith.
What does strong leadership mean to you?
Um, I mean, caring about people more than you care about yourself, wanting to do what you do more than, you got to want to teach more than being a teacher. You got to want to help people get better more than want to be a doctor. You got to want to play baseball more than being a baseball player. I think, you've got to be able to lead with a sincere, authentic passion for what you're doing. I think that's number one. Number two, you got to care about other people and really to make other people believe that you got to help them grow. People that you are leading, they care about probably two things. They talk a lot about, your employees being happy, but your employees want to be challenged and they want to grow. Show me a company that's got growth and challenge and ability for people to see the future or the ability to see that they can accomplish something right now. And I'll show you a group that's being led.
Interesting. Okay. So when it comes to an individual basis, though, everybody is kind of different, but we're all similar at the same time. So when trying to make an assessment as a leader, how do you really decide where to put someone or what role to put them in?
Well, I mean, it's complicated these days because it's so easy for people to think that they could do certain things when they can't, and then there's difficult sometimes getting people to see that they can do things even when they can. So that's a big part of the leadership and managing people is getting them to really see past themselves. And I think a good leader is able to step outside themselves and really see themselves in the situation that they're in, which is critical. I mean, it's really hard. I always talk about parenting and leadership and parenting is being able to step outside your family and see your family for what they really are. See your children for who they really are. Yes, you're going to love them. Yes, you're going to look out for them and care for them, but also see them, see their points of difference, see their uniqueness, see their struggles for what they are, and then you can really parent a lot better. It's really the same thing with managing. Like you get so close with your employees, and they get kind of caught up in an opportunity or a job that you've given them, but you got to step outside of that and really see them for what they really are, and that's difficult, because it takes a lot of energy and time about and caring about somebody else and thinking about someone else, which what most people don't do. They think about themselves and their situation And most people are compulsively, just completely, just some submerged into their own stuff, but to be a good leader and a manager, you've got to be able to break outside yourself and really get submerged into other people's stuff. And there's a whole bunch of different ways you could do that. But I think one of the most simple ways is one-on-one, just the more you could sit with, important people that you're managing one-on-one, and not a confrontational and not a pressure situation always, because sometimes you can learn from that, but then sometimes just sitting and talking to somebody and finding out where they're coming from uh, is huge. I always used to throw a bowling party for my companies early on, because they would bring their spouses and I'd get an idea to see their competitiveness, what they were like, what their excitement level was like when they won and got a strike, what how upset they would get when they didn't get a pivotal, a couple pins down. You get to really, it's kind of a little bit of a shot out of the 1 minute manager, but you got to be able to learn a lot about people by observing them. And sometimes I would just go into the office and I try to just pick one or two people out and observe them for almost an entire day and just kind of watch, just trying to get a feel. It's amazing when managers don't really have any idea. And these times it's even more difficult because everybody's so remote. But you're in an office. It's amazing when you can observe an employee or two for 5-6 hours and really see their focus and what they're doing. It's amazing what you'll see, good and bad.
That kind of makes me think a little bit. We are so isolated right now. In this world that we're living in with coronavirus, even just the internet itself has really led to a lot of opportunities, but it has also led to, in some ways, like the death of civility and empathy. We're not able to relate on kind of like a human level anymore when we're behind these screens. So how do you still find the empathy through working through technology?
I think probably we got to bring back the one-on-one conversation. I think now what's happening is, you got management and coaches, doing a lot of group conversations. So it's really no better or no worse than when they were before. So, the question is the manager going to take the time to do the one-on-one stuff? I mean, you really stop and think about how many times did your manager and coach talk to you one-on-one? I was talking to a Division I basketball player about a year and a half ago, and he was a senior. And I asked him, since he got recruited and came onto the team, how many one-on-one conversations with a coach? That's his boss, the guy who dictates his time, who's going to probably dictate his future. How many one-on-one conversations have you had with your head coach? And he said 0. And, that's just shocking to me. Like, and I'm not saying that every head coach that's the case. And I'm sure a lot of head coaches, they're busy and this. So I just think, to me, I think the one-on-one conversation, and I'm not talking about these reviews that companies make managers do, which are bullshit. There's only one thing you want to do in a review is tell an employee what you want them to do more of and what you want them to do less of. And same thing I would tell any player. And if I was coaching them in any kind of sport, do more of this. You're really good at this. I like your growth. Do a lot more. And by the way, this other thing you're trying to do a little less of it because you're not that good at it. But I think these reviews are, sometimes I'm not sure if managers and coaches really know how to conduct a review, and it puts a lot of pressure on a employer and an employee to have this one conversation that capsurizes 6 months, sometimes a year. I think if you're not sitting down talking to your the person you're coaching or managing, once a month or every other month, you're probably you're probably on the outside looking in, not getting the most out of your person.
Is that something that is instinctual for you or something you learned along the way?
Now I've learned it on the way. I mean, listen, I've watched my mother manage people as a young kid, and that approach, and it's complicated managing people. I mean, I always wanted to be a manager, so I studied management at Syracuse. I mean, you learn along the way, and again, there's nothing against the group conversation and letting the group know kind of where we're going as an overall. I think those types of meetings and those kind of conversations are important too. But, you got to think about what is it that's driving your people? What information is that's getting underneath your people to give them the lift? And I think that over time, what I've learned is that less bigger meetings and more smaller meetings and less meetings overall
Yeah.
help. I mean, having a lot of these Zoom meetings are driving people crazy. They're going way too long. And then, more one-on-one about, hey, given the situation, please make sure you talk to, do this, do that. Because I don't know, I always thought if people work from home, they'd be very, they'd save some time, no commute, no distractions with other people in the office. But then it's incredible how much distracted they are. I mean, I try to get people that are work from home, and they're like, it's almost as bad as when they were in the office now with the level of distraction. And the difference is you just don't know what they're distracted with. It could be their kid not feeling well that day, could be a leak in the ceiling. So all of a sudden you're dealing with a whole bunch of other distraction and factors that you, as a boss, you have to have empathy for, but also there's only so much tolerance you can have. And, some people don't manage the work-life balance well. So if your kid's in the other room crying, all of a sudden he's home from school, what are you going to do?
Work-life balance. This is something that I've gotten more interested in as I've gotten older. Uh, I know for myself, that was something that I really failed a lot at in my early 20s, where I was just so laser focused on the bullseye, and trying to succeed, trying to do that. Something you talk about is the work-life balance. Why is that important?
Well, I love that in my last book, Living on Purpose, which, I'm giving away free on my website, by the way, on Collectible Exchange. But, work-life balance is bullshit. Respect life balance is real. At the end of the day, if you tell me anybody's done anything extraordinary that was like, getting in around 9, leaving around 5, went to every little league game, I mean, please introduce me to that person. I don't know if they exist. I mean, listen, I think that you have to draw the line sometimes. And I think that there are times we have to say, look, I'm not available. My family needs me. I think you got to balance it out. I think when you're on a roll and it may be a couple of weeks, couple of days, couple of months, that's fine. It's when you get on that roll and it's 5 years,
And
we
time's
haven't been
passing
to
you
your kid's
by.
little league game in 3 years. You haven't had a catch with your kid. He's already 15. Like, that's problematic, I think. But it's difficult, like, to balance it. I talk a lot about this in Living on Purpose because it is complicated. And I think, to me, there's never any compromise in your health and fitness. It's a big mistake that people make. I always say, like, most people think when they do well, then, well, after I do well, make a lot of money, get the promotion, get the corner office, then I'm going to do good. But it's the other way around. You always want to do as much good as you can, and doing good will lead you to doing well. And that covers yourself. Like, you want to do as much good for yourself. You want to eat well. Oh, I don't have time to eat well. I'm on the fly. Like, well, really? Like, you mean to tell me if you don't eat incredibly well every day that you'd be more productive and be able to get more stuff done? Of course you would. If you exercise multiple times a week, you don't think that would give you more energy, enable you to even do more? People say, well, I don't have time to exercise. You don't think that if you took the time to spend a few hours with your spouse and made sure maybe you left your cell phone home on date night and you had a better relationship with your wife, you would do better at work because you're good with your wife. You're not good with your wife or husband. How many times you come into work and that's holding you down, holding you back, not motivating you? At least I know, like, when I'm not good with my wife, I'm not doing my best work. So I think that, it's important to do good and let all the do good lead you to doing well. So, the work-life balance is, look, if you're going to be somebody who's trying to be extraordinary and great at what they do, then that's who you are and that's what you want to do. It's not for everybody, but also remember, there has to be a pause button, not a stop button, and not a blow everything up button. But you got to use the pause button. It's the least button that's used on your remote control. It's the pause button. Just slow down, take a pause, leave work a little early once in a while, get to the Little League game once in a while. You don't have to be the perfect parent because it doesn't exist. But if you're somebody who's just all work, no focus on anything else, you're probably heading into a bad place somewhere down the road.
The pause button. That's a great point. The pause button, for me, I think another thing that I've kind of worked on for myself, when you hit that pause button, it's the ability to hit the play button again and get back to it. That's an art unto itself. Was that something, again, that you had to just learn through your own personal experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because you get so consumed with what you're doing. You're competing. I mean, listen, once you get to a certain level, you got people trying to pull you down. You got people trying to get you, trying to catch up. You're competing. You're fighting and scrapping, and it can be very consuming. So it really does take a lot of self-discipline and some mental stamina. Sometimes, you go to the gym to work out, and you got to go to the mental gym. Sometimes you got to take that time to really think about how your day and how things are laying out. And there's been a million people that talk about, how to get that right, because it's so important. Your mental mindset will control so many things. But it was difficult for me, because, you wake up and you want to compete. You want to be great at what you do. You want to do well for yourself, for your family. But sometimes you get a little carried away. So there was a breaking point for me when I realized that, there's other things in life than just being great at what you do. You don't want to be great at what you do and then suck at life. So, you want to make sure, that you kind of, as much as you're measuring how well you're doing in business, but usually how much money you make, your title, your promotions, and everything else. You should also measure what kind of friend, or what kind of parent, and what kind of spouse, or friend, those other things you are, because you can measure those too. So if you ask your kids on a scale of 1 to 10, how good a dad am I? And your kids start telling you like a 4 or 5, you may just want to realize like that score counts too. Even though you're making $2 million a year, your kid says you're a 4. Yeah.
Maybe that's the most important as well, like that measurement into itself, because when you look back towards the end of your life, I feel like you can spend it all in an office and all working, but if you don't have those relationships and you missed out on the people that you do love, then what was the point of all the success if you don't have the love and the balance to go with it?
Well, that's a good question. And a lot of people, can start thinking about now, or they can wait till the end of their life and figure out. But, listen, I love my work, and I'm going to spend a good amount of my time probably till I die working. But that's by choice. But, I'm not going to let it get in the way of certain personal things that, that maintain a good relationship at home and with certain friends and things like that. I think now with the virus going on, it's a good time to measure all that out, because for most of us, we were definitely had some level of travel, commute to our game, and we've now picked up probably at least a day a week more of personal time. And now you can really see the score. You can see where you're at, because you don't have the excuse. You don't have, oh well, I got this. You really are much more control of your time than ever. So I think this is a great time, even though, listen, everybody's busy. I gotta go. I gotta run, which is why they call it the human race, by the way. But maybe it's not a race. Maybe it wasn't meant to be a human race. Maybe it was meant to be something else. And I think this is a good time to evaluate that. To really evaluate your time on a day-to-day basis to see what's important. And not so much even that you should work less or do that, but you really see how it's your choice in many cases of, non-work laziness to participate in a lot of things that you really have always had the chance to participate in, but you choose the easy street of just focusing on doing well.
Where does that self-awareness come from, though? Is that something, again, going back to what you were kind of saying earlier, is that something that someone is born with, or is it nurture? Is it brought out in someone?
I mean, a lot of it comes from, when you grow up in your house, you see your parents, and you can pick up a lot of it there. And sometimes that could be good. Sometimes it could be bad. Sometimes you see wealthy people, their kids are kind of screw ups, and they don't understand why. How could this successful guy, and they hear this kid's a screw up? And that's because he never sees what his dad does. His dad's always at work. He sees what his mother does. And his mother is a bright, intelligent, warm, loving person, but she doesn't have the same kind of purpose and spitfire as the husband. The goal is that for both parents to infiltrate to that child's personality is how you create a winning environment for your kids, I think. And they really see it all. They see your parents working hard. They see your parents working in the community. They see your parents caring a lot about them. So I think, all those things matter. And a lot of times in a lot of homes, the kids only see one thing. They see mom's at home. Sorry about that. And they see, mom's at home, and then they see, they don't really know much about what the dad does. Like I grab my kids, took them to work all the time. to see the trials and tribulations of what I was fighting for. You know, I took them to meetings, let them work in the warehouse. I mean, they've seen it all. Now they choose, but they understand that, you know, the both being a good husband or being a good mom, being a good parent, being a good brother and sister, they see it by what they see you do as a parent. That's the biggest example. And most people think, I mean, it is important to make sure your kids don't kill themselves, but you know, kids are watching how you deal with your spouses as a parent, you know, how I deal with my brothers and sisters, or how I deal with my wife. They're picking up all that. There's no question. So I think that, you know, you learn along the way. I think it's another thing is like, you know, if I said to you, you know, whatever business you're in, you know, you've gone to every conference, you've read every book. But if I asked you, how much have you learned about being a better friend? How many books have you read about being a better husband or wife? You know, those books are just as important. So this is what you know, and then there's what you don't know. And your interest in getting better has to be more than just getting better at your golf game or better at just, you know, making more money. You know, getting better as a person isn't necessarily just making more money. And I think that's the problem with society is like most people view you as successful as somebody that's made a lot of money. Even though the guy's been divorced twice, treats his kids like crap. I don't look at that as a successful person. I look at that as being a successful business person, but I don't give much. That's not somebody I really want to hang with. That's not somebody I really ultimately respect. So, you know, my goal is, even this conversation is, yeah, you could always build up all the categories. There are people out there that can teach you more about having a better relationship with your spouse, how to be a better parent. It's amazing how little people want to talk about how to parent better. And is there anything more important than parenting? And I'm not saying the parents out there aren't doing a good job. I think it's the hardest job on the planet is parenting. But what consulting and helping you getting to be a better parent, considering it's one of the most important things you're doing. So I talk a lot about living on purpose. It's like, man, it's hard to parent, especially these days. Like, I think we all need all the help we can get in parenting. Yet most people won't take advice. They won't get help. And they, you know, they get what they get, which is, you know, this.
Speaking of parenting, in what ways did your mother kind of shape your views on life, business, friendship, all that good stuff?
Well, you know, my mother's favorite line was, "You got to have balls," and she was a fearless character. Probably could have used a little more discipline. You know, didn't have a lot of discipline. There's a lot of spontaneity, which doesn't always go over that well in my house. You know, because you know, there was never uh, any boundaries to what we were able to do, when we were able to do it, and how we did it. But you know, she taught me the importance of being fearless and being resilient and not taking no for an answer, you know, and not being afraid to go after all your wildest dreams. I think she also taught me one of the more valuable lessons, which is, you know, how important it is to help others. And that's why we're here. So regardless of what your status is, how much money you make, there's always room and should always be room in your day to help somebody. And the more you can help somebody, the better. And that's definitely got to be part of your diet, is trying to help somebody. And it's always part of her business sense too. Even when she was in business, it wasn't a focus on only making money. It was a focus on trying to help people, serve. And I learned a lot about serving people from her, about wanting to help people, whether when she was a travel agent or she owned a hair salon, making people feel better and look better, having, you know, honeymooners going at their best trip that they could afford. You know, she was extremely helpful in her approach. And I try to do the same thing when I'm in business, is not so much worry about what I can get and how much I can make, but how much I can really help. And then I let the money thing work its way out.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And it goes again back to,
It's unfortunate that most people don't do it, but yeah.
well, why do you think that most people don't do it though?
I think most people don't do it because they don't understand that that's playing the long game. Most people want immediate results. They size up and analyze the situation that's in front of them and don't see enough that's in it for them. They don't think that developing a relationship with any customer and every customer will eventually in the long run help you. They don't believe, they have no faith. They don't believe in the long-term process and in playing the long game. And I think most people are playing the game for today. And if there's a story that they believe today, then they'll buy in. If not, but you know, if you're playing anything but the long game, you're headed towards mediocrity. If you don't believe that, doing your best and putting out more than what's even expected and helping people, even though there may not be any kind of comeback or give back from what you're doing for someone, if you don't believe that putting out as much good in the world for the sake of just putting out as much good will help you at some point and enable you to have good come back to you, then you're playing the short game. You're playing a game that's headed to mediocrity. But most people don't have the faith that it's going to work out for them. They think, it's never going to work out. This person's never going to care. They're never going to give me any appreciation. There's never going to be anything coming back for me if I do all this other stuff. And it's the complete opposite of my mindset. And that mindset, I learned a lot of it from Harvey McKay and my mom. But that mindset came, when I was like 20, which is a hard game to play, which means do as much as you can for as many people as you can, as often as you can, and expect nothing back. It's a very hard game to play. That, to go out and do a lot of things for a lot of people, because some are going to take advantage and expect nothing back. But, putting out good and doing as much good it's good for your soul. That's what feeds your soul. Maybe it doesn't feed your pocket at that moment, but having a strong soul along with strong character and a mindset that wants to help others is powerful, man, as you go through this journey and this war of life.
It is a war, and there's many battles to be fought. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
But what's funny is, as I'm 60 and I've been doing this for 40 years, it's amazing how I pick up the phone and call people. It's amazing how fast they want to help me. I try not to ask people for help. I'd rather give help than get help. But, when I do call and ask for help, it's amazing how many people are willing to do a little bit extra or do something for me without even thinking, because they know that I'm a giver. And they know that whenever they call me, I'm not just a one-legged friend. So you just got to decide if you want to play the long game. There are people that have taken advantage of me and probably asked me to do things that are, way above and beyond. But something, that's okay. I'm ahead out there. Hopefully I've had a good positive effect. I hope that if the day that when I die, there's a whole bunch of people that say, something, I like that guy, man. He was good to me. He had a good effect on me. He helped me with something. I'm okay with that. That to me will be a great feeling as I lay there, trying to size up what the hell happened over these years.
Patience is truly a virtue. I think the long
game
game is...
I think giving without getting is a virtue. I think helping people and serving people is the underlying core of not only sales, but life. Most people run into somebody that's successful and wealthy and they think, what can I get? Not what value can I give? And value is what I do for someone that they can't do for themselves. Nobody, and we're not enough people are thinking about value, what their real value is, not just showing up and they just because they showed up at work for a whole bunch, X amount of years, and now they feel like they're valuable. No, what was the value you have? Which meant, what did you do for your company that that company couldn't do for themselves, that you made that company better? What value did you give to your friendships and to your community? Why is the community better? Because you lived in it. Like, I still get a player for the Little League, even though my kid hasn't played in 15 years. It's got to be some benefit of Steiner being in Scarsdale. So I get players for the Temple. I get players for the Little League. I try to do things for the community because there should be always an advantage and a value of you being involved in something. So think about what value you provide in the relationships you have, whether it be your job, your community, and even in your own house. Like what's the most valuable thing you provide? And think about if you're pushing that issue, because that's the underlying tone. I always think about every relationship I have. Am I providing any value? Am I giving value in this situation? Because if I don't, it's going to be a short-term, short-lived, proposition.
So changing topics, you bought old Yankee Stadium. How did that happen? I mean, it seems so fantastical that could even happen. You could start this company, you could do all of this. How did you have that vision to be like, how did that opportunity even arise?
Well, I mean, first of all, I don't know if it was fantastic. It was probably stupid, but listen, I love the Yankees, and we had a partnership at that time where we had a partnership to sell their game used and stadium used. So we had talked about if anything had ever happened, that we'd hopefully be able to partner up what I love about the Yankees is that they are a walk to walk and talk to talk company. So they understood the importance of taking that stadium down, what it meant to fans. And I had a very long term, very wide approach that was not necessarily liked by many, because it was going to be a 4-year plan, and I really wanted to do something much different with it than what most other people view doing. Most people take a stadium down, sell the most important assets, and screw the rest. And then a lot of teams don't even give it that much love. They just want to move on to the new stadium, and they don't want to get caught up in the past. But I think the Yankees understood the legacy involved, what went down in that stadium. Is one of the most famous stadiums of all time, and they definitely trusted me and definitely supported and helped me, and ultimately partnered with me to take this stadium down in a respectful way. I know it sounds crazy, but there's a way to dismiss a building, and there are ways not to. Like, and I've dealt with a whole bunch of building and stadium dismissals, and most teams didn't do it the way the Yankees did it, and I give them a lot of credit for that, because they believe in their brand, they respect the fans and their connection to that building, and a lot of us put a lot of days and time into that building and a lot of great moments. So as much as they had this new building going up, which was amazing in itself, they had the respect to take the time and support me to let me take the old one down. It was very, it was just a labor of love. I mean, again, not the smartest thing. There were ups and downs, and it wasn't an easy process. Not for me, not for the Yankees. The city owned the actual stadium, so we obviously had to work with the city. A lot of different union stuff and different complications with pulling that stadium apart, but we did it. And I'm happy we did it, because hundreds of thousands of pieces are now floating around the universe with Yankee fans. There's nobody better than the Yankee fan as far as how they feel about their team. And now they've got that little piece of the stadium, whether it be a seat, a base, dirt, grass, a piece of the foul pole, a piece of the black, maybe one of the lockers, or the carpet, which we made into doormats. We made it to, car mats. There's nothing we didn't think of. So I'm very proud of that project. If I had a chance to do it over again, I'd do it. I would do it. But it was, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. Probably not the most effective, productive work for 3-4 years of my time. And there's other things I probably could have done to make more money. But sometimes you just have to do things, because if you're really committed into your industry, which I was and I am, then you do things because it's the right thing to do. And sometimes things are not big revenue boosts, and they're not all kinds of, scale X. Sometimes it's just the right thing to do, and you do them because that's what the world calls for, and that's what the business calls for, and you do it.
A passion project.
A purpose, yeah, a passion and a purpose, and you make a commitment because it's the right thing to do, and ultimately people are going to appreciate it, and that's what your brand is all about. It's the people. Not
So
always
let's
the
talk a little
profit.
bit about predictions for 2021. What do you think is going to happen in the offseason? Do you think the Yankees will be able to keep DJ LeMahieu?
I have no idea. I hope so. I mean, obviously, the Yankees have a lot of different, they're a big company, and you have to respect the fact that there's always a priority for them to put the best team on the field. I'm very confident in the Yankee management and Cashman to doing that. But, they're a business, and they're accountable, and they can't just go off, especially in this environment where there could be another season where not full, with all fans and everything. They're accountable, and they've got to balance it. And I think all the teams are going to have that pressure. You can't just go off on spending sprees. I think that's somebody that I would think the Yankees want to sign. But, I'm not sure all the different priorities that they have. My guess says they sign him.
I hope so. They have such a great team and the ability to be another dynasty again, in the same way they were in like the mid to late 90s.
Here's what I say to people. I know they haven't won the big, gotten to the dance here the last 3 years, but what team right now, given their team right now, let's say we signed DJ LeMahieu, but what team would you want to trade the Yankees out for in the major leagues? What team would you rather have? If you can just do a trade, your entire team for another team, there's only 3 other teams that you can make the argument. The Dodgers, maybe Houston, maybe Tampa Bay. Maybe I wouldn't trade the Yankees for Tampa Bay. That's I wouldn't. But I still like Tampa Bay, but I wouldn't trade our team for that team. Maybe the Dodgers. You can maybe make an argument that Houston's got a formula all in all. Maybe. I wouldn't trade the Yankees for Atlanta. So you're still in the top three best teams in the major leagues. And you've been there for a while. Like, to me, I'm satisfied. Yeah, I want to win a championship, And Derek Jeter always said, if you don't win a championship, it's a failure. I don't agree. I think you want to be, in this day and age, with so many teams and so competitive, if you could be in the Final Four time and time again, which the Yankees have been in the Final Four more than any other team in the last 20 years, by far, I'm good. Now, do I want to win a championship? Yeah, of course I do. And I think everybody does. But to be in the top 2 or 3 teams in the league, even these last 3 years, is what you want as a fan. You want that emotional pull that you could win it all. You want to know your team, if everything does go right, can win it all. You have a chance. That's, I think, what management, ownership should at least try to deliver to fans. They can't, there's so many different factors with injuries, different things that happen that stop you maybe from winning that one game. I mean, the Yankees are 1 inning away from going to the ALCS. What are you going to do? That's why they play the games. But I just want to know that come the end of the season, I don't want to be the Mets. I don't want to be the Pittsburgh Pirates. That I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in sitting there and losing year after year after year at this point in competition. That's my take.
Final question. Did you really invent the everything bagel?
Yes. The story is in the book, and Living on Purpose, it's there. And I know Gary Vee made a big thing of it. Love Gary Vee. I just actually did a whole thing on Gary Vee. It's a whole story that, I don't want to take too much time, but basically when I baked bagels as a young kid, I was kind of bored. I had this nighttime job and I started messing around with all different seasonings. We came up with the everything bagel, but it did start with me delivering a lot of bagels when I had my paper route, which is how I got the making of the bagels job, which was what a blessing that was, because when I was like 12, 13 years old, you couldn't get a job. It was recession back there in the 70s. It was tough. So for me to be able to work continuously through junior high school and high school was amazing. And baking bagels was a big part of my childhood, which is why I don't eat bagels anymore, because that is not recommended on a diet. It's the most difficult carb probably somebody could eat. And there are only a few places that make great bagels, because I know better. And the everything bagel was just something that came up out of boredom. And I didn't monetize on it. So I always say your first idea is not your best idea. It's only an idea until you can execute it, which I did. And then you got to monetize on it, which I didn't. I was only 12, 13 years old, though.
Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great day. And I hope if anybody's interested, you can catch up with me on LinkedIn or Facebook. Look forward to seeing you.
Cool. Awesome.